Last week on Friday, we had some positive development emanating from the Apex Court. And maybe, Chairman, I would wish to give a brief background on this matter. That in 2021, the members are aware, the Senate, the Speaker of Senate, majority and minority leaders went to High Court. Again, the Speaker of the National Assembly, the COG and AG, challenging constitutionality of about 23 acts of parliament. And members, this is very important because it leads us to understanding how parliament should work in the two houses of parliament. And basically the challenge was that they challenged the process through which those 23 acts were enacted, one of which is NG-CDF Act. The question before High Court, maybe even before we go to that, and members are aware of this, looking at the role of Senate, and this is what now the Supreme Court has affirmed. Basically, the role of Senate in law-making process is very limited. And Article 96(2) gives or indicates the role of Senate in lawmaking function is limited to what Article 110 entails, particularly on a bill concerning the county government. That's what the role of Senate is limited to. 110A, such a bill should be or is expected to have or to contain provisions affecting the functions and powers of the county government. And this is very important because for the Senate to participate in law-making process that emanate from the National Assembly, that law must either be touching on functions and the powers of the county government, or a bill relating to the election of a member of county assembly, or a bill referred to in Chapter 12 affecting finances of the county government. But in this case, members, board members, my colleagues, we limit ourselves to 110A, a bill containing provisions affecting functions and the powers of the county government. This is fundamentally very important, as we shall see. Now, when the Senate and the majority leader went to High Court, they challenged the entire 23 Act and said these laws are unconstitutional because the process was not proper, and members of parliament, including the former members, are aware if the process is not right, the outcome cannot be right. It doesn't matter how good the provisions are, if the process is wrong, the law collapses. So in this case, members, if I take you a little back in 2013 and 2015, in 2013, when the Act of 2013 was declared unconstitutional, the then High Court, Majaja, Mobi Goge, and Justice Renola said, the Act of 2013 directly affected the functions and the powers of the county government. And so the court said the process was wrong. And so they could not have surveyed that act. It had to grapple. Came 2015, and in Naivasha, Chairman, you remember we made a presentation, and we had even other advocates, including members of the National Assembly, challenged in their mind the decision of High Court. At the gist of the whole judgment, those of us who have read the judgment of 2024 by High Court, the whole of the judgment revolved around the powers and functions of the county government. And so, members, shortly before the elections of 2022, the same Supreme Court again issued a judgment now on the Act of 2013. And we need to get the difference between the two Acts of 2013 and 2015. Now, the High Court in 2024 has said the Act of 2015, the current Act, and remember, this is very important, it affects or interferes with the powers and the functions of the county government. So, Article 110, 1A sets in. And so, the court said the Senate ought to have been involved because that act affects powers and functions of county government. Now, what has the Supreme Court said? When the High Court declared the 23 Act unconstitutional, the National Assembly and the Speaker went to Court of Appeal and challenged the decision of the High Court and said the High Court was wrong. Indeed, the Court of Appeal agreed with the High Court only on 4 laws, but 18 of those laws, the Court of Appeal said these laws do not affect the powers and functions of the county government, and so there's no way Senate would have been involved. Look at 110, 1A. Of course, that was not good news for the petitioners, the Senate. They went to Supreme Court, but Supreme Court was more clear that the High Court did not look at the intent and the purposes and even objects of those laws. What is the object of a law? So, the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court chairman evaluated each of the 23 acts independently. And chairman, let's listen to what the Supreme Court has said. And we are saying, chairman, why is this decision important? At paragraph 116, the Supreme Court has said it is notable from the language of the Constitution that the determination is focused on provisions, 110, 1A, provisions that affect powers and functions of the county government. And the question is, to what extent do the provisions of a bill affect the functions and the powers of a county government? So why has been the CDF Act of 2013 and NG-CDF Act of 2015 been challenged? The courts have said, the High Court has said, the petitioner and the civil society have said, you are implementing functions of county government. You have been wasting money because no one knows who is doing what. But the issue is they did not interrogate the act. And in 2024, the Supreme Court also came up with another decision. Remember the Finance Act of 2023. It went all the way to Supreme Court when the Act of 2024 was thrown away. And the court is very clear to have said, before you declare a law unconstitutional, ask yourself, what can we do to salvage this act? It's not looking at what we should do to strike down a law. Members will agree, the judgment of 2015, 2024 was the most unfortunate. Those scholars will look at that judgment in years to come, and they do not wish to meet those judges. And I say this with a lot of confidence because when chairman, a judge sitting at High Court makes a deliberate omission or commission, that a judge will quote along a section that does not exist in law, and unilaterally uses that unexistent section to strike down a law, it is most unfortunate. And that's what the High Court did. But chairman, in Kenya, we do not have a shortage of good people. Because the High Court chairman, the judges, the 3 judges, were looking for every single reason to declare the act unconstitutional. And that's why they went to an extent of misleading, misdirecting themselves. But now, in 2022, we verified Supreme Court. But now the court has come and said that we have ourselves reviewed the provision of the Act. They're talking about the CDF Act. We have ourselves reviewed the provisions of the Act as enacted and of significance in Section 24. Chairman, the amendment of 2022 and 2023 were never in vain. They were in response to the Supreme Court decision and of course the petition of 2016. And our section 24 was very particular that the fund implement projects that fall within the exclusive functions. And we are saying the High Court deliberately refused to interrogate the Act. And so, again, the Court has said that other provisions and reinforce, Chairman, these words are not used vainly. That whereas our section 24 is clear that we implement projects that are of exclusive functions of the national government as provided. Chairman, the Court has said, when you look at an act to find if it affects the functions of the county government, you cannot fail to look at the fourth schedule, which is very clear. But the Court, you look at the Act vis-a-vis the provisions of the fourth schedule. So the Supreme Court has said that other provisions reinforce. Chairman, we are talking of the entire 50-something sections of the Act. Reinforce this particular one, which is now 24, by restriction of the operations of the fund to the exclusive functions of the national government. And so they concluded that they agreed with the Court of Appeal finding that the statute did not affect the functions and powers of the counties. And so at 45, paragraph 145, it affirmed the finding of the Court of Appeal that the Act did not require the Senate to consider and that was constitutionally enacted. So what are we saying, Chairman? And our comments are limited to that extent. The matter before the Court of Appeal is challenging the finding of the High Court, particularly on the process, which now the Supreme Court has actually now is ahead of the Court of Appeal, that the process was right. So on that ground, Chairman, that was used to strike down the Act is now lifted. The other two grounds that were used to strike down the Act was powers and functions. The same court has said, as enacted, that Act does not affect in any way powers and functions. So the main two grounds, Chairman, I remember as Mheshimiwa Mwadio, this is very important. The only question now remaining before the Court of Appeal is the issue to do with separation of powers. That has been there. And the question of public finance. But now the question of public finance, Chairman, has been partly answered. Because we are saying, we do not know the kind of project you are implementing, and so you are likely to implement projects already implemented by the devolved function, thereby imprudently using public resources. I want to stop at that, Chairman, and perhaps this is good coming from the appellate court. And we are now have the Court of Appeal because those grounds now of our way, we hope, Chairman, our advocates whom we have had discussions, and even the National Assembly, they are going to now capitalize on this. Chairman, allow me to mention this one thing. The High Court judges literally copied and pasted the Supreme Court judgment of 2022, and yet that judgment was emanating with respect to the Act of 2013. And the arguments were, the Supreme Court said this, the Supreme Court said that, in respect of the Act of 2013. Thank you, Chairman.
Also, the status report on project proposals submitted by constituencies for financial year 2024-2025, offering insights into proposed projects and their alignment with national development priorities. The status report on receipt and disbursement of funds from National Treasury detailing the allocation to constituencies. That has been also there has been a problem. Schools have started closing, and yet students did not get the bursary in good time. The money was disbursed late from Treasury, and up to now we are not anywhere. We are still at 14 billion. 7 and 7.
7.
Yeah. So, that is just a drop. We cannot even move forward. When you remove the emergency and the operations in the office, most of the members cannot even be able to disburse bursary. Of course, we have been having the digital hubs, which were established long time ago through CDF also. And it was a partnership at that time. Right now, we are supposed to do it complete. So we have a section where we are supposed to allocate 3%. But if you do not have a digital hub, how do you access 3%? So CEO, I think that should match, because you cannot allocate 3% with zero.
NASC, your committee, is being left to the periphery. It is the view of the board that, Chair, you should be alongside, right inside this process, with Honorable Tindia Molo and Conga pushing it together, so that the committee is not left as bystanders. Well, this really affects how we operate. So what Chair, we would like to ask that you be in the forefront in what goes on in the National Assembly and then onwards to the Senate.
That I am employed in the offices since July. How are they being paid up to now? How much do they have extra money which they had kept to pay the staff, or the contract for the staff also expired and they no longer require to be paid? Because that is critical. Somebody who goes without salary for 6 months is 9, let's say 9.
On digital opportunities, job opportunities that we have currently, it will not go anywhere. They are there to stay. It will only evolve to something else. Personally, before I joined politics, I used to do freelance on ICT jobs. I'm a freelance, digital jobs from, so one of the companies in the US outsourced some work for us. And we've been doing that since the last 6 years up to now. I'm still continuing doing the same jobs. So it only evolves to something else. And we have to equip our youth with the skills that are necessary at that moment. So I still encourage every member within us here to still construct those ICT hubs, because they are beneficial and also can create jobs like immediately for our youth at different categories. Wengine waende majuu, wengine wapate kazi hapa Kenya, wengine wafanye digital jobs, wengine wafanye boda boda. So those different sectors of economy, we are just addressing a few. Those who have cleared school and are interested in ICT knowledge. So this is what the ICT hubs will address for those particular cases. Thank you.
On Friday last week, many of us had to issue the news from the judiciary that the Supreme Court had declared that certain laws that were passed by the National Assembly did not have to go through Senate. But not many of you realize that one of those laws that the Supreme Court said does not involve counties is the NG-CDF Act. That for us at the board is very important. It simply means that the Supreme Court is saying that the ruling of the High Court last year is in very many respects illegal.
The biennial report on the implementation of NG-CDF Act CAP 414A for financial year 2022-23 and 2023-24 provides an in-depth analysis of how the NG-CDF has been utilized over the past 2 financial years. It outlines success achieved, challenges encountered, and lessons learned in the process of implementing various development projects across our constituencies. This fund remains a cornerstone of grassroots development, empowering constituencies to implement projects that uplift the lives of our citizens.
Committee guides us on. When we look at the issue of digital hubs, we know how important that is. And it's an issue that I think His Excellency the President keeps on asking us how far we are and how far each of our constituencies have gone. We know that not all our constituencies have implemented the issue of digital health properly. Sometimes because of the issue of costs involved, we are going to find out how best we can comply with what needs to be done. When we look at the issue of nominees to CDFCs, not all constituencies have submitted their names. There were 90 have submitted, which have been forwarded to the committee, and they have been passed by the National Assembly, now awaiting the statement. Others are with the board, and I expect that by the end of next week, we'll be through with them. But there are a few constituencies which have not submitted any names at all. There is a contact with our fund managers in those constituencies to find out if anybody to see. But our being here today is not just because at the end of this meeting, the committee will present a biennial report. Members of Parliament do not understand how much work has gone into this so far. I think it needs to come out clearly that the committee and the board, what remains now is for the board to present these draft regulations. That's what remains. That should come out clearly, but members of Parliament in this regard. Because we've also done, you talk about the report which we presented yesterday. And then lastly, we agreed that now the committee
ruling. I don't know whether members should know, because it is a very important ruling which makes